Hey everyone, my name's Nathan Pay, and welcome to another episode of Coffee and Crypto. I've got a real treat in store for all of you guys in our community today. Really excited to have Gabriel, founder and owner of Nunu Spirits, here with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a real pleasure having you on.
Hey, thank you, Nathan. It's a pleasure being here. I get to talk about some exciting stuff today, so hopefully your viewers will enjoy.
I'm sure they will. I mean, I've personally been interested in your project for quite a while and been following it pretty closely.
Thank
And I
you.
think a lot of the
Thank you.
things that you guys are doing in this space is pretty awesome. So maybe just to kind of start it off to give everyone some kind of
Uh-huh.
context and background, what is Nunu Spirits and what kind of inspired this journey? Like what started it all?
So I started working in games about 12 years ago, working for another company. Did that for quite some time. Took a small stint off to do something in blockchain for a little while. I was like a content creator and brand manager for a little bit.
Okay.
But then about 4 years ago, we decided to start a studio. My friend and I, a co-founder, game developer, and myself decided to start a studio. And we're like, okay, what's the game going to be? And we had all these crazy ideas about this, uh, you know, uh, co-op defense league thing going on. But essentially, it became Nunu Spirits, the
Okay.
first version of Nunu Spirits. We actually tried to launch it as a free-to-play game on iOS, Android,
Mhm.
and we had some really great feedback and some retention from that. The Nunu Spirits are super cute, so we were able to get some really good traction on that. Unfortunately, at that time, we were chasing, I think, the wrong game. We were running after a Lemmings-like game. I'm,
Okay.
going to date myself with the Lemmings franchise. It's an older game, and it's pretty hardcore. You think it was, it's pretty simple. You just have to save the lemmings, and they just kind of run around
Mm.
and then fall off cliffs, and you don't even have control over them.
Right.
But it is fairly hardcore, and it didn't quite mesh with the people who were interested in the IP or
I
the
see.
designs of the concept. So put it on hold for a little while. But even back then, the kind of slogan was "Save the Nunu, save the forest," and that's what
Mhm.
you're doing inside of the game. You're saving these little creatures that look like little nature spirits, either seeds or nuts, and they had tree heads and stuff like that, which you can see all over our brand now. But yeah, we were saving game forests, fake forest, fantasy forests,
Mhm.
and while I was doing that, I was like, okay, so the intention is to save real forests, but how do I engage players into that discourse? And the answer that we had back then was, okay, we'll take revenues and we'll buy trees and we'll plant them in as a or in honor of our players.
Mhm.
But ultimately, that doesn't tell a very strong story for the player. The player's like, oh, okay, this company plants trees. Okay, fun. That's nice to have, but it doesn't really engage me as a player. So when we started working on a blockchain game about 2 years ago, we were like, wait a second, you can take an NFT, which is a non fungible token, and you can tie that into uh, a tree planting event. You have
Mhm.
trees that are planted in a real world. If you have some data on that tree, you can tie that data directly to the blockchain, and then that player, as the owner of that NFT, is actually also the owner of that tree planting event. And
So
so now they have that tangible connection to the trees that they're responsible for planting.
Mhm.
And so that's really how the New Spirits project kind of got its second life, its rebirth,
Okay.
so to speak. And now it's about playing some games, planting some trees, and doing some good in the world with the game, raising some awareness for things like reforestation and even blockchain itself. There's quite a bit of um, either miseducation, lack of education, or mistrust and fear for blockchain technologies in general. And I think we have this kind of nice, safe space for people to explore things that they aren't necessarily accustomed to exploring or willing to explore in a more hostile setting, such as typical web typical Web3 onboarding is pretty crazy. It's kind of like we were saying the wild wild west when we met.
Yep.
So that's Nunu Spirits. It's a hybrid model. So we have a free to play aspect and we have a Web3 aspect, and
Mhm.
those two kind of live separate from each other, and they can because of the way we're set up. But if you want to get involved in the Web3 side of things, you can. If you want to just treat it as a casual gaming experience, you can certainly do that as well.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah,
I think a couple things that come to mind right away, just that I just want to say, the environmental thing is important, especially in this industry. There was a lot of attention, especially during the last real run there on the environmental
yeah,
that this has. And
yeah.
I would agree
And
with you.
certain people saying we're no longer accepting, certain currencies because they're not green and stuff like that.
Which is, if
Um,
you understand the energy industry as a whole, is kind of silly to think that that was even a narrative for a little while, but at the same
yeah, yeah,
time,
yeah.
it
Well,
was.
if you
So,
do understand it, it does bother you.
yes.
I think it bothers you a lot.
Yes.
um,
You're like, "Wait,
you
it's
know,
1% of the energy consumption, wait, so solar is worse than this, what's the big deal here?" But if it's been in the
well, and
media,
70% of energy used in blockchain is already sustainable energy
right?
sources. So, I think the one place where we don't have to like worry about that too much is in this industry where people are looking for those every little single edge they can find over their competitors. So if that means they're using less energy than their competitor, they're going to jump on that and they're going to do it, not because it's necessarily some regulation or
Mhm.
necessarily more lucrative, but because it makes things easier for them and it gives them an edge over the competition. So
And I think something that
I think
makes me really excited about what you guys are doing is the tangibleness of the real world action, right? Because
yeah,
that's
well,
something projects have
there's
tried
there's
to
always
do.
been a disconnect between these digital assets and something tangible in the real world. So they often fall to speculation and hype and pump and dumps and all these sorts of things
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, there wasn't anything to kind of hang your hat on and say, okay, this is how much this is worth to me. But if we plant a tree and we tie that to the NFT, we know for certain that this is at least worth the cost of planting a tree, and that planting of the tree certainly costs a certain amount of money, but it also has an intrinsic value that that tree is now planted, that tree is now sequestering CO2. It may even have carbon credits attached to it, which also have value. But at the end of the day, a tree is a tree, and putting more trees on the planet is not is not a bad idea. You know,
Never,
eh,
never.
whatever you happen to believe about climate change or any of these sorts of kind of hot button topics,
Mhm.
I don't think anyone's going around saying we shouldn't replant some trees. you know?
Agreed. Agreed. Well, awesome. My next question was actually about the tokens and assets. So I know kind of when
Mhm.
people are first looking into the project, the Nunu, the NNT, the Nugo, that kind of comes up pretty quickly. I was wondering if you could
Yep.
help give us a proper understanding of how that's really used and
Sure.
deployed in your ecosystem, and really just kind of like think of as a new player coming in, what do they need to know as far as the tokens and assets go?
So there, as you mentioned, there are three tokens
Mhm.
in our ecosystem. There's Nunu, which is the NFT collection,
Yep.
and I think that one is by far the most important,
Okay.
given kind of the progression of the industry and where I think things are going with blockchain and crypto and GameFi in general. The strongest store of value, in my opinion, is those NFTs because they do have that utility, even if it's just as an art asset.
Mhm.
They never lose that ability. So we have an art asset. It's also a 3D model. So it's fully 3D. It has high poly and low poly resolution. So it's game ready, but you can also print it. And it's ready for crossing chains, going outside of our ecosystem into other people's game worlds, into other utilities, animations, etc. And it keeps it very consistent across the board. So
Okay.
NFTs, I think, kind of have that kind of built-in utility that makes them very strong within the industry of
100%
GameFi.
agree. 100% agree.
So the other tokens that we have are NNT, which is our native token. This was the token that we used to kickstart the project. We had a number of backers get involved early, supporting us by picking up NNT. NNT is basically a native utility token that kind of works similar to like how other hard currencies in traditional mobile games will work. So
Okay.
you'll be able to use that inside of our Web3 shop, buy items that you would be able to buy in game for hard currency or fiat currencies.
Mm.
But you can buy them on our website on our portal for less than you would otherwise. We can offer those discounts because we can distribute those rewards and those packages inside of our portal, and they can be read and distributed inside of the game,
Nice.
just as normal Web2 portals work.
Yeah.
A lot of Web2 portals sell their own hard currency outside of the stores, the platforms that they launch their games on. Um,
Awesome.
but NNT offers a number of other benefits that will come eventually as well. Things like DAO governance, rewarding for user-generated content, which is in our roadmap as well. Which, you mentioned we want to get into what's coming in the future on down the road. So I don't want to get too bogged down into that. We'll stay
No
on
worries.
topic with the tokens. But yeah, there's lots of potential for native tokens to add value to uh, basically the owners of the ecosystem. As game developers, uh, it's rather naive to think that you own the game that you're producing or that you're developing. It's really a collaborative effort between the developers in the studio and the community that is actually playing and engaging with the game. And
Love that.
so if you have tokens inside of that help to support those communities, I think you can develop a much stronger bond and a relationship between developer and gamer. And I think we're still, very much at the tip of the iceberg in terms of what native tokens can do for game ecosystems. And then the third token is Nugo. We're still trying to figure out how that one's going to play into the system in the end, but it's looking like it's going to be an in-game currency.
Okay.
So this is something that is earned inside of the game,
Mhm.
and it's spent inside of the game for progression. So you want to participate in larger events and stuff like that. You may have to have a cover charge to get in. This type of thing. You want to level up your Nunu. You start with a spirit. You want to get to that elder benchmark. You'll have to spend some of this Nugo to get him there,
Okay.
and that token is is kind of taking the place of a traditional hard currency, so
Yeah.
gems in a free to play game. And the difference between Nugo and just the traditional Web2 hard currency is that we don't just create it out of nothing,
Okay.
which is something that essentially can devalue the purchase of a hard currency inside of a traditional free to play game.
Mhm.
If I buy a package for 100 gems for $100 and the next day they're selling it for 50, I just lost half of my value, at least in my mind. And maybe even also in terms of what's purchasable inside of the game.
Right.
And so what we want to do is somehow tie that token and the creation of that token to our holders. So our holders are actually generating those tokens rather than us generating this arbitrary amount of tokens. So it decentralizes that kind of relationship a bit more.
Really
It
like
also
that.
provides incentive for the holders, the owners of the system, and it creates a more stable currency for use in game.
But I really like
So
this
those
how
are the three.
easy it is to understand that. Like, of course, your delivery was
Okay.
fantastic there. Thank you for taking the time to go.
Okay, good.
But from us, from the Game Guild and the research team, looking at hundreds of different
Mhm.
projects, there are some single token systems that are more complex than your entire explanation of the three there. So,
Well, we're we're hoping it becomes even more simple as we go, that
Mhm.
that we can kind of weed out some of these other, exchanges that don't need to happen, on the level of, okay, so we need to represent currencies in game and outside of game. We don't need to do that anymore. New
Mhm.
goal only exists in the free to play side, but it will be generated by actions that take place on the Web3 side.
Yeah,
And I think that's really interesting. And I think what that'll do is help bolster that producer consumer
I do too.
economy.
Absolutely. And you kind of said
Um,
I like what you mentioned about how it's almost naive for people to think that they own the game themselves, that they're
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
really a
Well, I mean,
community and
it's
everything.
that's easier to do when you have a premium game, for example.
Yes.
You know, you just like, I slaved on this for 3 years. I put it out there. It's my game, and
Mhm.
you hope that your audience appreciates it. You know, and when they do, it's considered a success, and when they
Yep,
don't, then it's considered a huge flop. You know, and that's, I think that's pretty damaging for game developers as well. That kind of
me too.
uncertainty, that failure when it happens, because it does happen. It's really hard to hit a market trend in stride along with your development time, which can be, like as I said, 2 to 3 years. It can take you to build a game, and if you miss that trend or somebody gets there first, all that wind is taken out of your sails.
Mhm. Good point. Now something else
Sales, and sales.
that
Double entendre there.
right on.
Sorry.
Something else I want to touch on, because I know some of our community members are going to be curious about this. Firstly,
Mhm.
is what inspired the art, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about, from my understanding, you can actually print these like from like a 3D
Yeah,
print,
yeah, yeah,
even if
yeah.
you want it. So, can you explain a little bit about the inspiration behind the art? And I'm
Sure.
pretty curious on maybe how you got to where it is and like what that process
Yeah, yeah,
was like a
yeah.
little bit as
I,
well.
I, I wish I was in my office. It's a little bit later in the evening here, so I'm already at home. I wish I was in my office and had all my little props and stuff like
Oh,
that,
okay.
because I could actually show you. But maybe we can edit those in the video as we go.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Nunu Spirits, the character started out as this idea that we wanted these nature spirits in this kind of environment, and they were going to be defending their little section of the forest.
Hmm.
And back then, it was the trees versus the beavers.
Okay.
Like the beavers were the bad guys, and they were coming in to, with industrial chainsaws and stuff like that to try and lumber this forest. Um, and so we had these, what's the tree spirit going to look like? And then we kind of took inspiration from like things like Mononoke,
Okay. Yeah.
where you had the kodamas, with the little,
Yeah.
so we wanted them to be a little weird, a little spooky. So that's why they have the big open eyes, with the glowy stuff inside of them. And then you can also take like the tree stump head off of them, and they can be completely empty. And so this idea of a spirit entering kind of the throw offs of deforestation, such as a stump. So we got the stump head thing going, and I started sculpting these little characters, in a polymer clay, and they were really pretty gritty and grungy back then, and it was a little bit more hardcore because it was a local co-op game. But as it evolved, we started, pushing it more towards, this kind of cute aesthetic that you see in games like Brawl Stars and stuff like that, where, they're just juicy, fun. The pop vinyl figures, where you have the big heads and the big eyes, that just, kind of have that that goo goo gaga effect. When you look at it, you're like, oh, it's really cute. And actually, funny story. Whenever we show somebody in Slovakia, which is where the studio is based, when we showed them these characters as they were getting cuter and cuter, they would say, "Oh, Nunu." And Nunu is like what you say to babies. It's like, "Oh, cute," and it's like Nunu.
Um, yeah,
And so
okay.
everybody's like, "Oh, Nunu," and so that's how they became Nunu Spirits.
Oh, that's it's nice to know that. That's a
But
story.
we, yeah, all of my artwork got kind of distilled down, and then reconfigured by some very talented artists that we brought into our team. Um, Actually, it's the strongest art team that I've ever worked with in my life. It's
Oh,
it's
wow.
been just a dream. In 12 years, I've never had such a small, close, tight knit group. We have a modeler, a concept artist, and a rigger and animator, and then a director that kind of oversees all of those. So basically, it's just four guys that did the whole collection, and me.
Wow, that's impressive.
So we're a very small team, but that passion really shows up. You can see the whole collection on OpenSea, or it's verified on NF Trade, for example. And every single one of them is completely unique. We have an in-house algorithm, a learning algorithm that basically takes handmade art assets, Mr. Potato Head parts, and recombines them in combinatorics, and makes sure that any Nunu that goes to mint has never been minted before, has never been generated before. Um, and so they're all actually, as you mentioned, they're all full 3D assets. So
Yeah.
they have asset data, they have vertices and everything like that, all the way down to a really high poly, really high density mesh, so that you can actually download it and print it on a resin printer, or even a FDM printer. I've seen some good success
Mhm.
from a few people printing on FDM. Because of the way the Nunu is shaped, it usually is pretty easy to support and set up in terms of printing. And yeah, they come out looking great.
Nice.
I'll send some over, and maybe we can throw them up in some little pop ups or something
That would be
during the
sweet.
call. But
I think just having something physical to connect that digital it's more
yeah,
than I think
definitely. I'm
people think, right? Like, you think, "Oh, it's kinda cool. Yeah, I can have my little, souvenir there," and it's like,
mhm,
no, there's a little bit more to it than that. Like, it makes you feel connected to that
yeah,
digital world in just a different way, and having the ability to have that, I think is super cool that you
yeah.
guys have done that. And yeah, the art is incredible. I mean, I absolutely love it. I
Oh,
think
thank you.
you guys went was fantastic. And you're right, it's like this weird, cool cuteness all mixed together, but really does
Yeah,
encapsulate kind of that Spirit Force vibe. And,
yeah.
a lot of
The
games I think.
seedlings actually The seedlings used to have arms,
Oh, did they?
back in the
Okay.
day, and we are like, "Why do the seedlings look so weird?" They just weren't feeling it. They look like creepy little babies or something, and, the other ones were fine because they needed arms to
Yep.
be able to interact with the world, but the seedlings actually aren't game-ready assets. You don't use them in the
Mhm.
game. They just kinda run around, and they kinda do silly things like bump into each other and try and climb trees and fall off them. And you can see them a lot in a lot of our animations and stuff.
Mhm.
And we're like, why? But they still don't. They don't feel right. They're head's too big, body's too small, or something. And then I drew one without just a quick sketch. I just
Mhm.
like 4 lines, and it had no arms, and I was like, oh my god, like the
Moment.
seedlings, they don't need arms,
Yep.
and they just look so cute without their. They run around, they fall, they bump into each other, and it makes sense because they're not functional. They don't give
Right.
you the ability to use inside of the game or interact with the game world.
Mhm.
They need to come together to become stronger and become a new spirit, and so that's what how they evolve. So it's always a process. It's been really fun to see them evolve from those early like clay sketches all the way to where we have today, where we can jack them out of a 3D printer and put them on our desk at work. It's really fun.
That is awesome. So I wanted to ask you two more questions here before we wrap up today. I think the first one
Mhm.
is, how are you guys doing for development timelines and roadmap? Where you kind of at,
Mm,
just to kind of let all of our community know kind of what to expect if they want to get involved and start
sure.
investing. And then also,
So
second to that,
okay,
I want to know like what's down the road, near future. I would say probably within the
okay,
next 6 months to a year.
okay, cool. So we are currently in soft launch. We just finished the technical soft launch side of things in a few small countries, but the good
Awesome.
news is within probably the next I would say 7 to 10 days we'll see a much larger release.
Nice.
We have a global community already, being a Web3 project. It was the natural course of things.
Mhm.
So rather than follow the traditional Web 2 launch strategy, which is to slowly expand those regions, um, we're pulling the gloves off, and we're just putting the app up in as many regions as we can, so that our global community actually can just access the game without jumping through hoops or signing up
Nice.
for test clouds and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So, yeah, basically within the next 7 to 10 days, we should see that release. It's in QA now. So, yeah, the game will be available on iOS and Android, at least initially. We'll look at other places where we can expand to as well, such as console. Like, I think this would be a great game for Nintendo Switch, for example, or,
Totally.
things, like Steam Decks and stuff like that. But, right now, we want to focus on the mobile side of things to make sure that it's always playable, on any device that you can get your hands on. Um, so accessibility is really important for us.
Okay.
Um, and in terms of our development plans for the game, based on on a lot of our early feedback. The mini games that are in there right now are all single player, and people kept asking, "Where's the can I play this with somebody else? Can I,
Mhm.
play against or with somebody?" We decided that this game was very heavily co-op leaning, in terms of just the spirit of the game is we
Sure.
want to come together as a community to help plant trees all over the world. So, if you can think of games like Overcooked or Mario Party, where you have to work together as a team to accomplish something inside the level,
Yep.
these types of games will be coming much more frequently and hopefully fairly soon. We're going to try and reach multiplayer by the end of this year.
Oh,
This is a pretty
that's
ambitious task. I don't know if anyone in your community is familiar with the difficulty curve versus single player versus multiplayer, but it's
big.
several order of magnitude more difficult.
Yep.
But we think that it's very important, and this idea of community and allowing people to play together is really why we're doing this in the first place. So we shuffled some things around. We took away some of the early Web3 stuff that we wanted to throw in within this year. We bumped that in favor of multiplayer sooner, faster, and that really fits well with our decision to go with the hybrid model, which was a pivot from our white paper. Originally, it was going to be a full Web3 game,
Mhm.
but looking at the way the market works, the number of users that we have available to us in Web3, it's just not enough to sustain a game for 2, 5, 7 years. Which is something that we definitely want for this game.
Awesome.
This is not one of those like let's just get it out, see what happens, and then we'll pack up and go home do something else. This is something that we think could make a difference in the world, could make a difference in blockchain, and it certainly made a difference for us in terms of our pride in our work and our pride in the games that we're making. So
Awesome. I'd say it has made a difference already, and even just the opportunity to see more of that come to light is really inspiring. And
we're seeing other games also in the refi space coming up. There's some B games that are some friends of ours, and we've
oh,
got
nice.
there's a company called the Eternals, or a project called the Eternals, where they're doing
Yes.
rainforest protection. They're super cool. There's the tree gens and the regens, and and it's kind of becoming a really fun community because everybody kind of supports everyone else, and
Mm.
it's a little different from the other games that we've kind of partnered with. Not to say that those partnerships aren't interesting, because we
Mm.
think that Nunu Spirits can play with any number of other NFTs and bring them into our world. We can go into their world, and that kind of cross game capability of NFTs is really kind of untapped until now, and we're still working towards that kind of promise that NFTs have offered for a while, and no one's really delivered on it yet.
Good point.
Um,
Where's the best
yeah,
place
so
for people to follow you, stay up to date with all your information? What would you recommend people do?
I think the most active space and the best space for games in general is Discord. We have a Discord server.
Yeah.
You can find all of our links and everything on nunuspirits.io.
Mhm.
That's the easiest place to go. We can throw up some links in the description, I'm sure. But nunuspirits.io has all the links. There's Telegram. We even expanded to Reddit recently,
Nice.
just to put a presence there. Um, you can find us on Binance Feed. You can find us on pretty much everywhere. Everywhere we're talking about, the
Yep.
project is a good place to check out. But really, Discord offers a lot of ways for the gamers are familiar with to get involved with the community. Special roles and channel only events and stuff like that. And so we're working on kind of expanding upon that Discord and building that more robust. And it's a great place to engage. I'm actually there every day. I think every day, but sometimes more than once a day. Engaging with the people who have come to us to enjoy Nunu Spirits together. They provide feedback. We talk about this, that, and the other thing. I'll post leaks and stuff like that all the time.
Nice.
Because when you're the boss, you don't have anybody else to add. Oh, can I post this? No, you just like, I'm posting this. Like, deal with it. And they're like, wait, it wasn't done. I was like, it is now.
Right on. That's awesome. I'll definitely be sure to leave all the links below so everyone can, definitely check you out. I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. Like I said, I've really quite been inspired by the project for a long time since I've been following it, and I'm really
Well,
glad to
I'm
be able
glad
to
we finally got the opportunity to sit down and do this.
Same
Yeah,
here. Same here.
yeah,
And I just want to let everyone know in the community, thanks so much for joining us today. Of course, definitely drop us a comment down below if you've got any questions, and come talk to us about Nunu Spirits as well. And
yeah, definitely. We'll be haunting around, your communities as well. I'm sure in the near future, because I think we have lots to talk about,
me
and
too.
share some similar goals, and definitely the similar mindset. Like,
Agreed.
yeah,
We'll have to have you on here maybe in another couple months for a follow up. Maybe
would love
once,
to. Yep.
and then of course maybe once the multiplayer comes, we can kind of get our game built together. We can do like a
Yeah,
live
yeah, that's
stream
gonna be
event.
really. We can do some live streaming. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, there's so many things I can't wait to do with this project. So I'm really excited about those things.
Me
So
as
yeah,
well.
hopefully this will be the first of many that we share them with you. So
Agreed. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And of course, if you're not subscribed to the channel already, please make sure you do. Leave a like. And like I said, leave us a comment down below if you've got any questions about Nunu Spirits, or come chat with us on Discord. Just like Gabriel said there, that's the best place to kind of go get in contact with them. And until next time, cheers. Don't forget about our 1,000 subscriber giveaway where you can win $200. And if you need more information, be sure to join us on our Discord. See you there.